Jimmy L. Smith was an employee of the city of Salem as a lieutenant in its fire department. She worked here without any problems for 7 years until doctors diagnosed Smith with gender identity disorder. Smith is a transsexual, meaning she was born a biological male but has a female sexual identity. Then, her coworkers began making comments that her appearance and mannerisms were not masculine enough. Smith went and spoke with her immediate supervisor, Thomas Eastek, about her gender identity disorder diagnosis and treatment so that Eastek could address the problems that Smith's coworkers were creating. Shortly after, Eastek met with Walter Greenemeyer, the chief of the fire department. Even though Smith just wanted the problem solved quickly, Greenemeyer then went on to discuss Smith's condition with the law director for the city, Brooke Zellers. They wanted to terminate Smith, but knew they had no just reasoning, so they tried to force Smith into resigning by having physicians conduct psychological evaluations on 3 separate occasions, hoping that she would refuse to comply so they could fire her for insubordination. 4 days after Smith received a right to sue letter from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, Greenemeyer suspended Smith for one 24-hour shift based on an alleged violation of an outdated policy. As a result of these incidents, Smith filed Title VII claims of sex discrimination and retaliation, equal protection and due process claims, and state law claims of invasion of privacy and civil conspiracy. It was then determined that Title VII does not protect transsexuals, so in turn, the district court judge dismissed all of Smith's claims and granted summary judgment for the defendants on the federal claims. Smith didn't give up, though, and she appealed the claim. On appeal, the Sixth Circuit first examined Smith's sex stereotyping claim in light of the Supreme Court's pronouncements in Price Waterhouse. The court found that Title VII's prohibition on discrimination because of sex bars gender discrimination. The court aptly observed that the district court relied on a series of decisions made before the Price Waterhouse decision that failed to include gender in the definition of sex. The Sixth Circuit recognized that limiting the analysis of sex discrimination to biological categories is inadequate and thus expanded the basis upon which sex discrimination is forbidden. The Sixth Circuit held that Smith's status as a transsexual did not bar her claim. The court also held that Smith sufficiently pled that her suspension constituted an adverse employment action. In order to establish a prima facie case of employment discrimination pursuant to Title VII, the plaintiff must show the following. The proof of an adverse impact was clearly shown by the fire department's suspension of Smith for a 24-hour shift, which constituted 60% of a 40-hour work week, was sufficient to establish a material adverse change in the terms and conditions of the plaintiff's employment. The Sixth Circuit Court correctly applied the Price Waterhouse decision to hold that transsexuals are protected against sex discrimination under Title VII. The Sixth Circuit increased the scope of protection available against sex discrimination by including multiple concepts of prescribed sex discrimination. The Sixth Circuit's holding and reasoning in Smith represents a significant victory for transgendered people. By reiterating that discrimination based on both sex and gender is forbidden under Title VII, the court steers transgendered laws in a more expansive and just direction. So now the second question asks, what does Title VII have to do with this case? And Smith asserted Title VII claims of sex discrimination and retaliation, and transgendered people were not previously covered under Title VII until the Price Waterhouse case clarified what the term sex includes when Title VII states that it shall be an unlawful employment practice for an employer to discriminate against any individual with respect to his compensation, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment because of such individual's race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. The third question asks, what is the question the Court of Appeals is asked to answer? The Court of Appeals must answer whether or not sex stereotyping occurred as well as adverse employment action. The court then decides to rule in favor of Smith, and they held that her suspension constituted an adverse employment action. Because Smith had successfully stated claims for relief pursuant to Title VII, the judgment of the district court was reversed. The next question asks, says that the court hinges its decision on the Price Waterhouse case and why. The court hinges its decision based on the Price Waterhouse case due to it being a Supreme Court ruling that gave the definition of what the word sex could be considered. This case was presented in 1989 and recognized that sex stereotyping is unlawful sex discrimination under Title VII. The last question asks, what does sexual stereotyping have to do with a case about a transgendered person? The definition of sexual stereotyping is the formation or promotion of a fixed general idea or image of how men and women will behave. So even though Smith was transgendered and was born a male, since she identifies as female, there's a sexual stereotype that is probably already attached to her that she should look and act a certain way. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.